An official White House photograph depicts five men in the Oval Office: three ex presidents, a lame duck president, and a president elect. It is a boring, routine photograph, the kind that commentators dismiss as an inconsequential publicity stunt. And yet, it is a most extraordinary photograph. Are these men kind, honest, fit to lead the free world? I don't know. Opinions conflict on each count. I understand that some of them are bitter rivals. Yet in the country over which they presided, former heads of government can be in each other's company without fear of death. How common is this in the wider world? Well, until recently, orderly succession occurred on the death of a monarch. The old king is dead, long live the new king. Until constitutional monarchies transferred power to elected ministers, a former head of government was, by definition, a dead head of government. If five of them were in the same room, it was probably the royal crypt. This system is still in use in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, where the monarch wields absolute power. With the exception of Faisal, Saudi kings to date succeeded on the death of their predecessors. Faisal had his predecessors deposed and exiled on pain of death. A conference of Saudi ex kings is literally impossible in this world. As monarchies weakened and new post colonial nations gained independence, republics emerged as a common form of government. In this setup, individuals get themselves elected to head governments. In theory, this creates opportunity for former heads of government to confer. In practice, a depressingly large proportion are presidents for life.
Remember, you're only president for life.
They stay in office as long as the Almighty keeps them on earth, and on earth as long as their colleagues tolerate them in office. The Soviet Union offers instructive examples. The last Secretary General, Gorbachev, is the first Russian head of government to outlive his office. With the exception of Khrushchev, all his predecessors died in office. Khrushchev's successors kept him under house arrest from his ouster to his death. Rumors and denials of foul play in these deaths are immaterial to the impossibility of former secretaries general gathering for a sit down. Prior to the 1917 revolution, the Russian Empire ran on hereditary succession along the lines now current in Saudi Arabia. Distribution of living former heads of government is uneven in the world. Examples of high concentrations include Great Britain, with five living former prime ministers, France, three living ex presidents, Canada, seven, Australia, six, Sweden, six. List of countries with zero living former leaders is long and includes Syria, North Korea, Uganda, Tajikistan, and Venezuela. Higher numbers tend to associate with shorter terms in office, wider pluralism, and lower levels of political violence. Lower numbers tend to export refugees. I propose that the number of living former heads of government is an indirect but objective measure of freedom. This indicator has two important properties. It measures a widely known quantity, and it is hard to fudge. Metrics like rule of law, freedom of speech, minority rights are important and often subjective. Figures like GDP per capita, literacy, and incarceration rates, infant mortality are equally important and easy for governments to cook. In comparison, dates of death are easy to ascertain. This note presents anecdotal examples. It would be interesting to compile a full index by country, by year. In particular, I'm curious to see how the worldwide aggregate evolves over time. Countries as diverse as Nicaragua and Singapore went from zero to positive around the fall of the Berlin Wall and stayed positive since then. It would be interesting to see what else this index correlates with. To qualify for this index, an individual must be a former head of government who held executive power and relinquished it. The individual must be alive and free to participate in his or her country's civil society, run for office, publish opinion pieces, or appear on national TV. Incarceration, house arrest, and exile disqualify individuals from inclusion in the index for the duration. This index needs a name. As a count of ex heads of government, EHOG is tempting but sounds unstatesmanlike. While it counts live EHOGs, the central insight is about most former leaders being dead leaders. The working name, therefore, has been Dead President Freedom Index, or DPI for short.